After my last breakup, I had no choice but to move back in with my family. My ex and I had gotten a place together in Boston. A mistake I'll never repeat. Tip: never sign a lease with someone you've only been dating a short while. He wasn't the person I believed he was. So now I'm back in Western Massachusetts. If you're familiar with the area, you'd know the further west you go, the more rural and quiet it becomes. I'm not exactly a countryside girl. I thrive in or near major cities, especially being in my 20s. My parents' town is incredibly slow-paced. Hopefully this is temporary until I can find a place I can afford, preferably not in Boston again for personal reasons. I picked up my old job at the urgent care center I worked at before moving. They welcomed me back, even though it's just a short-term thing. The downside? The overnight shifts. They're slow and mess with both my sleep and social life. Not that there's much of a social scene here anyway. After these shifts, I usually grab what's essentially my dinner. Not many places are open at 4 a.m., but there's a bagel shop that opens early, offering more than just bagels. I grabbed a chicken sandwich and a salad to eat at home. I also needed to refuel, so I stopped at a Shell station on the way back. It's a large gas station, oddly quiet no matter the time of day. I went inside to pay cash, always trying to save where I can. When I got back to the pump, I noticed another car had pulled in, a blue sedan. A man got out just as I started pumping gas. He locked his pump in place and walked over to me, saying, "Want to see something funny?" I immediately regretted engaging, but still replied, "What is it?" He then performed that tired, detached thumb trick people do to entertain toddlers. I gave a forced laugh, hoping he'd leave. He didn't. He just kept doing the trick, even after I turned away. When my gas tank finally filled, I quickly wrapped things up and hurried inside to get my change. When I came back out, the guy was gone, but his car and pump were still there. Not wanting another awkward moment, I checked my backseat out of caution, locked the doors, and drove off. I made it home within 5 minutes, excited to finally eat. I used the hidden spare key my parents keep outside, let myself in, and then returned the key to its usual spot. I made sure to lock up behind me, as always, and went to the kitchen, being careful not to make noise. We only have 2 family vehicles, so I've been using my mom's since I don't own one. Didn't need one in Boston. I sat at the table and started eating. Then, I heard the front door unlock and quietly open and shut. My chewing stopped. I froze and called out, "Mom? Dad?" No response. No footsteps either. I crept toward the front hallway. Nothing. The place looked empty, but my pulse was pounding. Panicked, I ran upstairs and burst into my parents' bedroom. Both of them jolted awake. I frantically explained what I heard. My dad jumped up and went downstairs immediately, flipping lights on as he searched. He checked for the spare key. It was gone. My mom scolded me, even in the middle of her fear, for not double-checking before re-hiding it. My dad continued the search, and I tagged along. When he checked my brother's old room, I stayed behind to do a second check, more for my own peace of mind than anything. I peeked under the bed. Nothing. I checked the closet. Empty. I went back to the main level while my dad checked the basement. I was too scared to go down there, even knowing he was already in it. I stayed upstairs with my mom, but couldn't shake the feeling something was still wrong. I crouched down and looked under the dining room table near the front entryway. And there he was. That same man from the gas station was hiding under our table. I recognized him instantly and let out a scream. My mom joined in right after. My dad rushed upstairs, ready to confront the intruder. The man crawled out and began struggling with my dad, who's in his mid-60s, by the way. As the situation escalated, my mom and I jumped in, hitting and pulling at him until he finally broke away and ran out the front door. We called the police immediately. Luckily, they arrived fast, but that guy still had our spare key. That night, an officer stayed parked in our driveway, and my dad wedged a chair under the front door and slept in the living room. The next day, he changed the lock, and my parents agreed. No more hidden keys. I still feel responsible for putting my family in danger. But deep down, I suspect he followed me home. Maybe with his headlights off, because I never saw another car on the drive back. I'm just grateful we all made it out safely. And now, more than ever, I need to find a new place to live. I enjoy nighttime drives, mostly because I can't stand being stuck in traffic. I'm from Long Island, New York, and if you know anything about it, you know the traffic here is absolutely maddening. My brother lives down in Florida, and I like to visit him now and then. It's a pretty long haul by car. Depending on when you hit the road, it could take you over 18 hours. I usually leave in the early hours of the morning, around 2 a.m., just to dodge the rush hour nightmare. That way, I'm already past the congested areas before the rest of the world wakes up. On this particular Thursday morning, I was doing just that. I grabbed my coffee from Dunkin' and set off, knowing it was going to be a marathon of a drive. The reason I wasn't flying was simple. I planned to stay for a full month, and I didn't want to keep bugging my brother to drive me around everywhere. Once I cleared Long Island and crossed through Jersey, the roads opened up and things were smooth. That's the thing about I-95. Once you're on it, you just cruise south. Around 4 a.m., I started getting hungry. I hadn't eaten anything before leaving, mostly because waking up that early throws off my appetite. But now it was catching up to me. I saw one of those food signs on the highway. Wendy's was listed, so I took the exit. It was some random area in New Jersey, no streetlights, mostly woods. The only real light came from my car's headlights and the glowing signs of a couple closed businesses. I found the Wendy's. The drive-through menu board was lit up, and there was a single car in the lot, so I assumed it was open. I pulled into the drive-through lane and waited. And waited. No one greeted me. After about a minute, I leaned toward the intercom and said, "Hello?" Still nothing. I checked the hours on my phone, and sure enough, it wasn't opening until 6 a.m. And that's when it happened. 3 sharp knocks on my window made me jump out of my skin. I turned to see a man standing there, smiling at me. He motioned for me to roll the window down. I didn't feel safe, so I only cracked it open. He said, "They're closed right now." I replied, "Yeah, I just found that out." Then he told me he was stranded. His car battery was dead. He pointed to the other car parked near the tree line and asked if I could help jump-start it. I told him I didn't have jumper cables. He quickly added, "I've got a set in my trunk." I hesitated. I'm the kind of person who believes in helping others, but something about this didn't sit right. Still, I convinced myself I'd feel worse if I left him there without at least trying. So I agreed. He moved away so I could pull up next to his car. It was head-in to a corner spot near the woods, so I did the same to line up our hoods. I popped mine, stepped out, and he popped his trunk to get the cables. We hooked everything up, and I restarted my car to let the battery charge his for a bit. He gave it a few minutes, then got into his vehicle and tried starting it. But nothing. We waited longer. Still nothing. It didn't make sense. If he had just driven here, the battery shouldn't have been that dead. He muttered something about calling a friend and walked a few feet away, phone to his ear. He started speaking quietly, in Spanish. I don't understand Spanish, so I wasn't sure what he was saying. When he came back, he said his friend suggested giving it one more shot in a few minutes. I nodded, but now I was uneasy. Something felt wrong. Then suddenly, I heard 2 trucks roaring from opposite sides of the lot. Pickup trucks, engines revving hard. They cornered me fast, one on each side of the Wendy's, boxing me in. I whispered, "Oh no," under my breath as I frantically ripped the jumper cables off my battery and slammed my hood shut. But it was already too late. The trucks parked behind me, blocking my only exit. I glanced at the man. He was still smiling, but the friendliness was gone. Now it looked sinister, cold, calculated. My heart was pounding. I didn't wait. I yanked open my door, threw the car into reverse, and slammed my foot on the gas. The tires squealed as I tried to wedge past one of the trucks. The opening was tight, but I managed to scrape through with only a loud metal grind as my bumper hit the truck's side. They shouted something, but I didn't care. I floored it back toward the highway, heart hammering, adrenaline kicking in harder than I'd ever felt before. I didn't stop driving for another hour. No food, no rest, just raw panic and the distant roar of engines echoing in my ears. To this day, I don't know what would have happened if I hadn't trusted my gut at the last second. But I learned something that night. Helping others is a beautiful thing. But so is knowing when something doesn't feel right. And when it doesn't, listen to that feeling. It might just save your life. We've all been on long drives before. You know the kind? Miles of empty highway stretching out ahead, rest area signs popping up every now and then like lifelines. You see the sign, calculate how long you can hold it, and try to decide if you can make it another 20 minutes or not. Sometimes you're lucky and get one of those rest stops with food courts and glowing lights. But other times, all you get is a tiny lot, a cold concrete restroom, and silence. This happened to me during a 15-hour road trip, most of which I was driving through the night. I won't say exactly where I was coming from or going to because, honestly, that doesn't really matter. What matters is that somewhere along the East Coast, in a pretty isolated area, I had one of the most unsettling experiences of my life. It was late, past midnight. The road was practically empty and I was deep into the drive. I was getting uncomfortable, restless. I'd been sitting too long, and nature was calling. I started keeping an eye out for the next rest stop sign. A few miles later, I saw one and took the exit. It was one of those small, bare-bones rest areas. A single building for restrooms and a handful of parking spaces. There weren't any trucks or RVs there, just one other car parked near the far end of the lot. I figured someone was probably sleeping inside it. I stepped out of my car, stretched for a second, and glanced at the other vehicle. The windows were dark, either tinted or fogged up, so I couldn't see if anyone was inside. I didn't think much of it. I headed into the bathroom. The second I walked in, I froze. There was a man standing in the far corner of the room, not at a urinal, not washing his hands, just standing there with his head tilted down facing the wall. He wasn't moving. He wasn't making a sound. He was just standing. My first instinct was that maybe he was drunk or homeless, but something about the way he stood there, so still, made my skin crawl. I almost asked him if he was okay, but my gut told me not to. I quietly made my way past him to one of the stalls, trying to act normal, even though my heart was pounding in my chest. I closed the door behind me and stood there, unable to use the bathroom. It was just too quiet. I couldn't hear him moving. Couldn't tell if he was still in that same spot. I felt frozen. Eventually, I gave up trying, flushed the toilet to at least give the impression I'd done something, and opened the stall door. That's when I saw him. He was no longer facing the wall. He had turned, and now he was staring directly at me. He hadn't moved from his corner, but his head, his eyes, were locked onto me. His face was pale, gaunt. His expression was blank, but somehow still deeply unsettling. His eyes looked like they hadn't blinked in hours. I didn't say a word. I turned and walked straight out of that bathroom and back to my car. As soon as I got in, I locked the doors and started the engine. But just as I shifted into reverse, I saw him in my mirror. He was walking out of the bathroom, slowly, heading toward my car. I peeled out of there without even checking if anyone else was on the road. I just wanted to be gone. I didn't care how far the next rest area was. I was done with that one. About 20 minutes later, I saw another rest area sign and pulled in. This one looked nearly identical. Same layout, same tiny restroom building. No other cars in the lot this time, which, honestly, made me feel a little better. I parked right in front of the building, hurried in, and made a beeline for a stall. Finally, relief. But just as I was finishing up, I heard the bathroom door open. Footsteps. I expected them to stop at one of the urinals, but they didn't. They came straight toward the stall. Then they stopped. I looked down and saw shoes right outside my stall door. Whoever it was wasn't moving, just standing there. For a split second, I hoped it was just a coincidence. But deep down, I knew. It was him. The same man from the last rest stop. My heart was in my throat. My limbs felt frozen. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't even understand how. Had he followed me? Was this some kind of twisted game? I couldn't stay silent anymore. I spoke up, my voice shaking. "Someone's in here." No reply. That was when I knew. This wasn't just weird. This was dangerous. I grabbed my phone and with shaking fingers dialed 911. I turned on speaker as fast as I could. As soon as the operator answered, "911, what's your emergency?" I spoke loudly and clearly. "I'm at a highway rest stop. A man followed me here. He's standing outside the stall. I feel threatened." I said it loud on purpose. I wanted him to hear me say those words. I wanted him to know someone else now knew. The operator began asking for my location, my name, what he looked like. I answered everything clearly, still speaking loud enough so the man outside the stall would hear it all. And it worked. I heard his footsteps retreat. He walked out of the bathroom. I told the operator what had just happened and that I didn't feel safe leaving until an officer arrived. They agreed. I stayed in that stall, locked in, trying to calm my breathing. Minutes later, I heard a knock at the bathroom door. "State Police, you can come out now." The officer stood outside with his flashlight. I explained everything, what happened at the first rest stop, how the man looked, what kind of car I'd seen earlier. He checked my vehicle for tampering. Nothing. The man was gone. Vanished. The officer offered to follow me for a bit just to make sure I was safe. Eventually, he exited the highway and I continued on my way. The rest of the trip went as normal. But my nerves? They didn't settle for hours. I've never been followed before. And while I know these kinds of stories usually involve women being targeted, that night taught me that danger doesn't discriminate. It can happen to anyone, anywhere. And sometimes, all it takes is a quiet man in a bathroom corner. Ever had a road trip take a dark turn? If these stories chilled you to the bone, hit that like button and subscribe for more spine-tingling encounters. Have you ever been followed or seen something you couldn't explain? Drop your story in the comments below. You might just be featured in our next video. And remember, next time you stop at a rest area, look twice. You never know who's waiting.